quibbles or things that they're bothered by. People focus on narrow things. Professionals know how to look at a whole situation, and their opinion so far, I haven't found anyone saying that they think we're getting, the quality of services given the amount of money we're spending.
Yeah, the total budget is larger, but also the budget spent on personnel is much larger.
Oh, yeah, exactly. That was sort of the first thing that both of these property managers said. You have how many staff? And at the time that I was describing our staff was down from what it used to be.
Barney
we used to have more staff, and Barney's been saving money by not replacing people in the center. But that's one of the reasons the grounds look like they do.
Exactly.
So this is a bad way to try to manage. Fourth point, if we can't set aside some of our considerable budget to rebuild our reserves, we will be forced to impose another assessment. I'm really worried about that, and that's why when we decided on the assessment, I told the board then, you guys were here, remember, I said, I want to be going over the budget and seeing if there's a way for us to manage this operation so that we can take some significant chunk of that and use it to start building replacement reserves for the future, so that we won't have to do another assessment as we just did. I hear that, and of course this is something that's going to have to be tested by our study and the facts. We'll look at the bids. All these managers told me, offsite management's expensive. It's not going to be, but on the other hand, looking at the total budget, both of them told me, and neither of them is interested in winning our business. If we go elsewhere, that's fine with them. What they wanted to make clear was that they could make a good living, get us better services, and still, not charge us the full $800,000 that we're currently spending. So we would be able to, and I want to see what the number is. I think that one of the things that's most likely to persuade the board to go with this idea is if we see consistently across several bids from bidders that we have looked into and we're getting very good recommendations from, that they can do these services we've asked for according to our template for $100,000 less a year or $150,000 less. And if that turns out to be the case, that's going to be a pretty compelling argument in favor of this.
100,000 or less plus vendor services?
No, it would be the vendors. I mean, of course, what we're going to be asking is they will actually, the way I understand it, the bids will actually be their fee for management. And then they will be then on one model, they will be responsible for hiring vendors in. And so one issue is what will we be paying for those vendors?
That's
and
right.
One of the ways to estimate that is to ask them, and this is part of our job here as the subcommittee, is to find out, well, so what do you pay for plumbing? Mm-hmm. We know what we're paying. We know what we've paid for boiler maintenance. We know what we've paid for maintaining the pool.
Right.
And so we can ask, so what are you going, now some of them have said that, one of the two property managers I talked to said, we might just fold all of that in based on
But do they know that we have 40 years old boilers?
Oh, yeah. Well, of course.
Because it's insane. 100,000 less plus vendors. We're going to be paying more.
Well, it goes
that.
to economy of scale, because one of the things that we're doing right now, which is one of the reasons I'm in favor of the professional management, is we're sort of chasing brush fires around and batting them out. But anytime you have to do something right now, it's inevitably more expensive than it is if you can plan it a year or 5 years or however far out, and get bids and compare options and plan ahead and do it the right way instead of having to have this big emergency. I mean, the plumber in the middle of the night is always more expensive than the plumber who is going to come in a month.
Jackie's point is exactly the one. I mean, another thing that both of them said informally to me was, you don't know where your reserves. I've been hearing for all the years that I've been on this board that we had the best reserves of any HOA in the area. However, when I showed the size of these two guys looked at the size of the community and then the reserves and said these are completely inadequate. So the picture that was painted was a picture that I think kind of got grandfathered in over time, in which it was a lot of money given the size of the HOA and its frugality. But as we come to need that money for replacement costs, the lack of a reserve study and a plan going forward, both of these property managers said if we were to take over this facility, we would have to sit down, do a reserve study and then plan everything. And it might mean that everybody's going to be saying, and we're going to be advising you to increase your your dues over the next 2-3 years. But they wouldn't be, they would be more inclined to go that route rather than wait for an assessment to be needed. So they do both of them said, you're in trouble in part because you haven't planned for this. In the past, you didn't plan for this eventuality, which we already know is true. But they saw this even without me telling them horror stories about the roofs and everything. It was just by looking at the age of the buildings, the kinds of roofs. You know, I didn't have to go into anything about EPDM and all of that. And so that again suggests that, you know, to me, that a professional who knows how to plan this way, who thinks in these terms, is someone that we need. And we need them not on an occasional basis when we're trying to patch a fire or deal with an assessment, but in an ongoing way so that we build on past investigations and past experience and planning that prepared us for this present situation. So we're not always putting out
And one of the
fires.
disadvantages of being a condo owner as opposed to a house owner is that you don't get the training from your bank about, okay, put this much aside every month to make sure that you've got money when the basement floods, or whether you've got money when the washer craps out, or you've got money when the tree falls on your roof. And so as a community, we've been sloppy about that.
Well, but the common sense is takes that if you own a condo, you have to save money for repairs. You don't have to own a detached home to realize that.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
And a lot of people here have not done that.
Yeah.
And now that things come to crash, they cry and foul.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I think that's unfortunately, there is at least a minority that seems to be reacting to the situation
Well, and that's
without
part.
an awareness. But look, this is educational.
Yeah, and that's
I
part.
think this was also what happened with HOA communities, most of which, a lot of people who live here have lived here for 20 years. Back in, 20 years ago, the situation was less dire. The buildings
Yeah.
were newer. There
Well,
wasn't that
and I
problem.
think one of the things that the board and perhaps the subcommittees can do that will ease things going forward is take an educational role of making sure that people are aware of the numbers for now and the numbers for 5 years, and just be, more about letting people. And that's one of the problems that I've seen with the board since I've lived here is it's fallen on radio silence, and it's like hello, 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 and all of a sudden, oh my God, it's a crisis.
Right.
So I think that's probably another sweet avenue, a low-hanging fruit for improvement.
Absolutely. So now another thing, and I think this is just a general point that needs to be emphasized separately, which is an equally important point, that HOAs are coming under more legal and regulatory scrutiny, and I keep hearing, this from, we've been hearing about the new law, and, there was an issue with smart regs, how far it applies to the homeowners association, how much it's just the owners is, that doesn't change the fact that I think that we should be managed by people who are out ahead of all of this. And these professional managers, I asked them questions about everything that we were currently dealing with, including EPDM, and I got substantive answers back that helped me to understand things that I was hearing from others. And so just being in this business professionally apparently makes you aware of things like that if you're working in this area. And so I think that it would also mean that we wouldn't have to be going to the lawyer as often as we've been going recently to try to get answers to questions which Barney can't answer. But a professional manager has already dealt with that. And often they have a lawyer on staff. Lots of these are questions that the professionals have had to answer before, so we don't have to go and get an answer from
And
from
again,
Graf.
you've got your economy of scale working for you there.
Right. Another thing which I didn't include here is I mentioned the vendors we're using for various things, and the fact that the two professionals I talked to only knew of some of them, and I gave them some rough idea of some of the costs, and they said, well, we have vendors who can do that are reliable and do it for less than that, suggests to me that something that I'd also been hearing for years and years and years on this board, when we were asking Carol, for example, to go out and and investigate more vendors, are these really the only people that do decks? Are these and we kept hearing, well, it seems like that's the case, but I think it's partly because Carol was always trying to find the lowest, the less expensive, and so she wasn't going to the professionals. She wasn't dealing with companies that can do this and have found ways to do it for less. So I think there's a chance we could get better vendors
Yeah,
just by virtue
yeah,
of
and
working through
and
professionals
again
who
with
have
the-
to have good vendors because their reputation is on the hook.
And the, penny wise, pound foolish question of, do you buy an expensive suit that'll last you 20 years, or do you buy a cheap suit that you're gonna have to replace next year?
Yeah.
And I think Carol was in the cheap suit school,
Yeah.
from my
Yeah.
observation.
Yeah, probably so. And I think she was encouraged in that direction. by the
But
board
things got done.
over the years.
Mhm.
The siding got done, whatever was put away, the money.
It wasn't a disaster, and
was
some
spent.
things that haven't been going well since Barney took over did go well under her tutelage. So
Yeah,
it was a mixed story. It sounds to me like maybe I should wrap up here, but I did want to mention one other thing that really impressed me. One of them showed me the professional reports that they produce and the way that the budget and the monthly reports and the description of the infrastructure projects, the long-term plans, the annual thing that was handed to the board to see where things stand with respect to long-term projects, all were in the same language and the same structure, so you could go from one to the next, and everything lined up so that you could get a general picture.
Mhm.
And I showed her our cleaned up, and remember, Lynn has been cleaning up our budget and cleaning up our monthly reports, but they're just not
Yeah.
professional. And I heard about, I forget the name of the program now, but there's a program that you could get, and we looked into it when we were looking for a database where we could combine all these things, a ticket system and all that we're trying to institute. But it cost $70,000. Well, both of the managers I talked to already own that system.
Yeah.
And that's another efficiency by going to outsiders, because we'd have to buy it ourselves and train someone to use it and so on. Okay, so let me switch to the second thing, which is my picture at least, and we should talk about this. This is the substantive part, because it sounds like everybody here is sort of signed on to the idea that we ought to do something, we ought to look into this. So my thought was that we should form this subcommittee to do the following things in this order. First, create a template that carefully describes in detail the services we wish to be provided by any professional management company. We produce a prototype of this, I hope, before the meeting the last week of this month, Thursday, I think it's the 24th. So if we had a target,
It's the 22nd.
no,
It's 18th.
I already said I'm postponing to the end of the month so that this committee has time
The
to work.
22nd.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so
Sorry,
the monthly meetings.
Barney knew that, and I was gonna let the board know, but.
I actually planned a trip so that I didn't leave until the 19th.
Oh, God.
so the
Well,
date-
Naseem, you'll have your job, I mean, if you really wanna be
Well,
at
I want
that
to be
meeting.
here, yeah.
Well, I'm sorry about that, but I realized as I was preparing this stuff and talking,
Should be the
realizing how
25th.
much time we had, that
Let's
So
see,
yeah,
the-
there was no way we
Yeah.
could get it
25,
done.
yeah.
Yeah, so the
18th
third
is the
third
Thursday.
Thursday is 18th, so what you're saying is that we're scheduling for the 25th?
Yeah,
Okay,
25th, okay. That's good to know.
sorry, Naseem. It's another one of those, when
Oops,
you're
postpone
an
the trip,
amateur
Naseem.
operation, it's just one of those
What's
things.
that?
And it's
Postpone the trip.
traditionally 6:30, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that a Thursday then?
It's
Yeah,
Thursday.
it's again a Thursday, but it's the last Thursday.
Right.
It's
So
not
we'd
even
have
Mercury
time to
retrograde. I've
prepare.
had a lot of issues with this trip.
There's
already.
something going
Oh,
on, yeah.
no.
Are you sure it's gonna be not Mercury
I'm
retrograde
missing
when you
stuff on
go?
every piece of it.
Oh, no, oh, God.
Yes,
Well, so I guess it was already a theme.
it's definitely a theme.
I'm sorry to add to the negative theme.
Well, at least you're not the only cause.
Right, well, that's true. Okay,
I'm like,
I'll
it's not
compromise
Mercury
on
retrograde yet.
that.
Yes, but will it be then? See, that's where
No,
the
the
idea-
I don't know. Maybe you're right.
We would
Maybe.
at that board meeting we would present to the board this template or a couple versions and then hash it out at that meeting.
Mhm.
And I'm actually anything else that's not equally important and nothing else is, unless a roof caves in or a building burns down, I'm gonna push to the side to make sure that we sort this out at that meeting. And I think we can, because there's widespread, I think, interest in seeing what we come up with. And this would be just approving us to go off with a model and ask for bids on basis.
The other thing that might be worth doing is talk to the various potential bidders and ask them if they have templates that we can plagiarize from. Because I think one of the steps that I would really advocate having is have a brainstorming session where basically anything goes.
Right.
You know how brainstorming works, and a
Sure.
lot of times you can come up with stuff that way that would
Sure.
never occur to you if you're doing a more formalized. So I think it would be a good thing to do, and just basically pour everything into the pot and then
Sure.
start sorting.
Sure. I mean, one of the good things about having somebody else's idea of here are the services we